Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? Because to them, she wasn't really there, not in the way that counted. Sarah Martinez was just a contractor in coveralls, the one who cleaned their weapons, organized their kits, scrubbed their scopes, invisible, replaceable background. But in the sterile hum of the Blackwater Training Facility armory, surrounded by millions in military firepower, her hands moved with a rhythm that told a different story, surgical, calm, intentional. Each component of the Barrett M82 sniper rifle lay disassembled on the workbench in perfect order. Cleaned, examined, respected. "Respect the weapon, Sarah," her father used to say, his voice a quiet thunder in her memory. It's not just metal and mechanics. It's the line between someone breathing and someone bleeding. He had taught her more than just marksmanship. He had taught her presence, precision, patience. Master Sergeant Carlos Martinez, once one of the Corps' finest snipers before an IED in Fallujah, left him with one leg and a fire that wouldn't dim. After the blast, he couldn't serve, so he passed everything he knew to his daughter. By 12, she was out shooting grown men. By 16, she was hitting targets that mocked experienced shooters. By 20, she was better than her father had ever been. But none of that mattered here. Not when you wore a contractor badge and carried a cleaning rod instead of a sidearm. Not when you were a woman in a place soaked in testosterone and metals. To them, she was just the girl who cleaned the guns. Then the armory door exploded open with a bang that made her coffee mug twitch. Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison swaggered, and like the walls themselves owed him a salute. His Special Forces team trailed behind him, laughing too loud, too easily. Morrison looked exactly like the recruitment posters. Tall, square jaw, polished boots, more ribbons than most of the base combined, and a smirk that could sour milk. Jesus Christ. He muttered loud enough for the entire armory. They've got the help touching out precision equipment now. His eyes swept over her like she was something broken on the floor, something in the way, unwanted. What's next? Letting janitors fly fighter jets? Laughter exploded from his team, but Sarah didn't flinch, didn't speak. She kept working, hands steady, though her jaw clenched tight, so tight it might have cracked her molars. She'd heard it all. Before, Morrison stepped closer, his cologne sharp and synthetic, mixing with gun oil and cold metal. "Sweetheart," he drawled, each syllable soaked in condescension. "This baby costs more than you make in 5 years. Maybe stick to mopping floors where you can't break anything." Then, without permission, without hesitation, he snatched the rifle from her hands, his fingerprints smeared to steel she'd just finished polishing. She didn't speak, didn't move. She just watched, a storm brewing beneath calm skin. Morrison turned to his team like a game show host. 50 caliber precision instrument, effective range over 2,000 meters. In the right hands, he gestured mockingly toward Sarah. Of course, assuming the operator knows which end the bullet comes out of. More laughter. Corporal Jenkins gasped between chuckles. "Maybe she thinks it's a vacuum cleaner." Sarah said nothing, but she saw everything. The way they laughed harder when Morrison laughed first. The way they searched his face for permission before joining in. Pack behavior, alpha dynamics. Her father taught her to read people the same way. He taught her to read wind. "I bet she's never even fired a weapon," someone whispered. Morrison's grin widened. "Oh, I'm sure she's dangerous. Might accidentally spray Windex in someone's eyes." He lifted the Barrett again. 17 confirmed kills. "With this thing, that's real marksmanship, sweetheart." Sarah's fingers tightened on the cleaning cloth. She could outshoot him. Hell, she'd hit longer shots before she was old enough to drive, but not yet. Morrison set the rifle down and turned to leave. "Next time we need someone to polish bullets real pretty." He tossed over his shoulder. "We'll give you a call." The door slammed behind them. She was alone again. No applause, no defense. Just the sound of fluorescent lights humming overhead and her own breath pulling slow through gritted teeth. Let them laugh. Tomorrow would be different. The morning sun bled through the windows of the briefing room like gold through a rifle sight. Morrison stood front and center. His Barrett leaned against the wall behind him like a loyal dog. His voice filled the space. "Gentlemen," he announced, "yesterday's long-range exercise went exactly as planned. 2,400 meters, threaded through a simulated insurgent's forehead. Perfect." The room buzzed with approval. "Not bad for government work," he smirked. "When you're born for this, results like that are inevitable." The rifle gleamed behind him, a trophy, a mirror for his ego. Then the door creaked open. Sarah stepped in, toolkit in hand, still wearing oil-stained coveralls. Every eye turned. She was smaller than them, quieter, but something in her eyes, steady, unblinking, made even Morrison's smirk falter for a moment. "Excuse me, Sergeant Morrison," she said. Her voice was sharp, clean, surgical. "I need to speak with you about your rifle." Silence fell like a dropped shell casing. He turned. Slowly. "The help has something to say. This should be entertaining." She stepped forward. "Your rifle's scope is off. 3 clicks to the right." The words were clinical, unapologetic, as if she were pointing out a broken vending machine. The room froze. "You've got to be kidding me," Morrison snarled. "The cleaning lady thinks she can school a Green Beret on rifle maintenance?" "I'm not kidding," she said. "Your groupings would have been tighter if you compensated for it. Your 2,400-meter shot could have been better." The words landed like shrapnel. There was always better. Morrison's jaw worked silently. Then his face twisted. "Fine," he spat. "You want to talk big? Let's see what you've got. 1 hour, range? Bring your best shot." Sarah tilted her head, calm as a spring-loaded trigger. "One condition," she said. "When I outshoot you, you apologize to every support staff member on this base for treating them like they're invisible." Morrison's laugh cracked the tension. "When you outshoot me?" He barked. "Sweetheart, the day you outshoot me is the day I turn in my tabs and become a mall cop." But his voice had lost something. He didn't know it yet, but he'd already lost. Word spread through the base like wildfire in dry grass. By the time they reached the range, a small army had gathered. Someone set up a grill. Hot dogs, cheap beer, folding chairs, an audience hungry for humiliation. Morrison puffed his chest. 1,500 meters. Give the lady a fighting chance. Sarah shook her head. 3,800. You could hear the wind change. Even the range officer blinked. "Man, that's beyond our facility record." "I know." Morrison's grin evaporated. "You're insane," he muttered. "Maybe," she replied, "but in 57 minutes, we'll know for sure." Why would she risk everything on an impossible shot? Because it wasn't just about the bullet. It was about the silence that had followed her for 2 years. The kind that hums beneath every dismissive laugh, every sideways glance, every time they looked through her like she wasn't even there. The range stretched out before her like a proving ground carved by ghosts. Sagebrush, sand, and a horizon so wide it could swallow a man's pride and never give it back. Sarah lay prone behind the Barrett M82, the rifle's weight pressed in too. Her shoulder like an old memory. It didn't scare her. It never had. It felt like home, like her father's voice echoing across the Mojave, whispering corrections as the sun dipped behind jagged hills. Behind her, the base had turned into something between a tailgate party and a firing squad. 300 people, soldiers, contractors, mechanics, cooks, commanders, and Morrison, pacing like a lion on a leash too short for his anger. She watched him from the corner of her eye. His mouth moved, hurling quiet insults, desperate ones. She could almost taste his fear through the desert air. That same air carried the sound of beer cans cracking open, of money exchanging hands, of bets stacking up, but none of it reached her. The scope inched toward the target, a silhouette so far it shimmered like a hallucination. more mirage than man. 3,847 meters, a number no one in that crowd believed was possible, except her. And maybe, just maybe, one old man watching from behind a dusty fence, arms folded, eyes narrowed. The base range master. Patterson, a man who'd seen everything twice, but not this. Sarah's fingers moved like a symphony. Windage 2 clicks left. Elevation 6 up. She felt the breeze on her cheek, not as an obstacle, but as part of the rhythm. She counted seconds between gusts like heartbeats. Her breathing slowed. In through the nose for 4, hold for 4. Out through the mouth, again. Her heartbeat dropped into a steady bass drum. She wasn't nervous. She was. Still, not because the pressure didn't exist, but because she had lived this moment 1,000 times in the desert with her father. No audience, no noise, just dirt, heat, and faith in the process. The rifle doesn't miss, Mia. He used to say, the shooter misses, the rifle only listens. She aligned the crosshairs over the ghost-like figure on the far hillside. Not quite human, not quite unreal. Her finger hovered on the trigger, taking up the slack gently, as if shaking. Hands with destiny. Then she stopped. Waited, a wind dropped. Time did too. Firing, she announced. The word cut through the crowd like the sharp click of a chamber locking. Then, boom, the Barrett's roar shattered the desert air. The recoil kicked like a mule, but she absorbed it like breath. The bullet was already halfway across the world. 3 seconds passed, then 4, then impact, came the voice from the spotting scope. Patterson didn't shout, didn't whoop. He just exhaled. Target hit dead center. Then silence, not the awkward kind, not the disbelieving kind. It was reverent, sacred, the kind that follows a miracle when people don't know whether to cheer or kneel. And then it came, the eruption. The crowd lost its mind, voices shouting, hands grabbing wallets, cameras swinging toward her, soldiers hugging strangers, veterans blinking like they were 20 again. Someone dropped a hot dog. Someone else started crying. And Morrison, he dropped to his knees. His binoculars shook as he tried to see what everyone else already knew, that he had just been erased, not humiliated, not embarrassed, erased. By a girl in coveralls. Sarah sat up slowly, body calm, eyes unfazed. She ejected the spent casing, safed the rifle, and started breaking it down, routine, no victory dance, no speech, just respect. Morrison stared as she passed him, not saying a word. His hands trembled at his sides. For the first time in his career, he had no comeback, no witty jab, no escape route. She didn't look back, didn't need to. The footage hit the net before she could put her rifle away. Grainy cell phone videos from every angle. The contractor, the sniper, the impossible distance. A 3,800-meter shot heard. Around the military world, it tore through social media like shrapnel. Is this even real? Who is this woman? Confirmed or staged? God, tear shooting. Within 48 hours, the base gates were crawling with media vans. CNN, Fox, foreign outlets, military press. Everyone wanted to know how a cleaning contractor had just redefined what a rifle could do, and who she was beneath the oil-stained sleeves. But Sarah didn't care about the spotlight. She walked to work the same way she had every day before. Coffee in one hand, rag in the other, like nothing had changed. Even though everything had, Morrison found her on the third morning. He looked different. No swagger, no grin. Just a quiet man, carrying something heavy inside. He stopped at the armory doorway, hesitating like it was enemy territory. Martinez, he said. First time he'd used her name. She looked up from the barrel she was polishing. Said nothing. He stepped in. I was wrong. Just that. No sugar, no spin. Not just about the shot, he said. About you, about all of it. I've been walking around like rank makes me smarter, stronger, better, and the whole time I've been blind. He sat down slowly, elbows on knees. "You didn't just outshoot me," he said. "You made me realize how many people I've ignored. The kitchen crew, the janitors, hell, even the guy who fixes the SE. Sarah watched him. No judgment, no forgiveness either. Just space. "My father taught me that skills and strength don't come with a uniform," she said. "They come with time, with pain, with patience." He blinked. "Your father was military?" "Master Sergeant Carlos Martinez, Marine Corps, Fallujah, lost his leg in an IED blast." Morrison's face went pale. "Jesus, you're not just some lucky contractor, you're a legacy." Sarah shook her head gently. "I'm a person who listened, who practiced, who waited." Later that week, Colonel James Harrison summoned her. His office was part museum, part war room. Medals, maps, citations, glory from 3 decades of command. He stared at her like she was a classified file come to life. "In 30 years, he said, "I've never seen a shot like that." She stayed silent. "The Pentagon's calling it the shot of the century." He continued, "Special Ops wants to study your methods. The Marine Corps is asking if you'd consider enlisting. I'm happy where I am." "Sir," she replied. Harrison smiled. "I'm not here to recruit you, Martinez. I'm here to promote you." She frowned. "How do you feel about becoming our lead marksmanship instructor? Full contractor authority, triple salary, your own program." Sarah blinked. It felt like fiction, but she only had one condition. "I want to start a talent program," she said, "to identify the ones like me, the invisible ones, kitchen staff, janitors, technicians, anyone overlooked." Harrison nodded. "What do you want to call it?" She paused, then answered, "The Hidden Talent Initiative." Why was she standing in front of a classroom of killers? Because now she wasn't invisible. She was Sarah Martinez, lead instructor of the most elite long-range shooting program the base had ever seen. Not by rank, not by politics, by proof. The kind you can't deny when a bullet lands 3,847 meters away from where it started. Now they were listening, and that scared her more than silence ever did. The classroom was stripped bare. No slogans, no trophies, no war porn, just 4 walls. A whiteboard, a firing log, and rows of soldiers who had spent years believing no one outside their bubble had anything to teach them. She stood at the front in her black contractor uniform, sleeves rolled, hands steady. "Marksmanship," she said, "isn't about ego. It's not about glory. It's not even about hitting the target." They stared, waiting for the twist. "It's about making a promise to yourself and keeping it." Someone in the back shifted uncomfortably. She wrote a number on the board, 3,847. It hung there like a ghost. "That number," she continued, "means nothing without the hours that came before it, without the bruises, the heat, the silence." The room stayed quiet, but this time it wasn't defiance. It was respect, genuine, earned. That same day, she walked the grounds with a clipboard, a pen, and a question burning behind her eyes. Who else had they overlooked? The mess hall, the motor pool, communications, admin, most people didn't know what to make of her. "Ma'am, are we in trouble?" "No," she'd reply. "I'm looking for potential." A fry cook from El Paso named Maria Santos caught her eye first. On a smoke break behind the dining facility, shooting bottle caps. Off fence post with a battered revolver. "At 40 yards, you ever shoot at paper?" Sarah asked. Maria shrugged. "Only in my dreams." A week later, Maria was grouping tighter than half the base's recon platoon with a 9mm pistol. Word got out. People whispered. Sarah didn't stop. Motor pool tech named Tommy Chun. Soft-spoken, always covered in grease. Stunned the fire team instructors during a tactical knowledge test. He'd never even seen the inside of an infantry briefing. But somehow, he knew more about flanking doctrine than the people writing the manuals. Her second graduate, the third, was James Radar Williams. A wiry comes tech who spotted a camouflaged drone on a ridgeline 3 clicks away. With his naked eyes, Sarah didn't promote them with medals or applause. She just handed them opportunity. That was enough. Morrison started showing up early every morning. Not to challenge, to learn. No swagger, no sarcasm. Just a man with a notebook and questions. What? Do you see when you're in the scope? He asked her once. She didn't answer right away. Then, I see the mistakes before I make them. He blinked, wrote it down. He spent evenings with janitors who had combat tours in their past, sat in a library learning psychological ops from a civilian archivist, even asked the guy who repaired HVAC systems about demolitions, and got a lesson he'd never forget. You're really doing it, he said to Sarah one night. You're digging talent out of the shadows. I'm just flipping on the lights, she said. The Hidden Talent Initiative spread like a quiet fire. Bases in Arizona, Alaska, Okinawa. They all wanted to replicate it. Commanders called it innovative. Old schoolers called it unconventional. But soldiers? They called it hope. Sarah kept teaching, quietly, consistently. Her students weren't perfect. Some cracked under pressure. Some washed out. Some surprised even her. But all of them, every single one, got to stand in the light. The program became her legacy, not the shot, not the fame. The belief that greatness doesn't come dressed in rank or shine. It comes in silence, in hunger, in someone watching and being willing to say, I see you 6 months in. Morrison stood beside her at the range as the sun bled over the hills. He'd come full circle, from mocker to mentee, from arrogant to aware. You know the crazy part? He said, wiping down a barrel. I used to think my biggest target was downrange. She looked up. And now? She asked. Now I know I was aiming at the wrong thing the whole time. He paused. I wanted to be better than everyone else. You made me realize. I should have been learning from them. Sarah didn't smile. Not exactly. But something in her expression softened. That was enough. The Barrett M82 that had made her famous was now mounted in the base's Hall of Fame. Encased in glass, a plaque beneath it. The rifle that proved excellence has no uniform. But Sarah rarely visited it. To her, it was just a tool, a symbol of one moment. Her real work walked the halls beside her every day. In Santos, now teaching hand-to-hand to SEALs, and Chun, writing tactical manuals for junior infantry. In Williams, now attached to a forward reconnaissance team. Spotting movement no drone could see. The ignored had become the irreplaceable. Not by accident, by design. One evening, Sarah walked past the armory and paused. Inside, a new contractor, a young woman in stained sleeves, was carefully cleaning. A rifle, eyes focused, hands steady, outside the window. 2 operators leaned against a truck. They didn't laugh. They watched her work. One of them even nodded. Sarah turned away, letting the moment pass without interrupting it. She didn't need applause, didn't need gratitude. Some legacies don't wear medals. They move silently through systems, changing them without asking permission. And sometimes, dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Why did she still sleep with earplugs in? Because applause could be just as deafening as doubt. And neither one meant much when you were trying to focus 6 months after the shot that changed everything. Sarah Martinez still started every morning. The same way. Quiet. No alarms, no headlines. Just breath, black coffee, and muscle memory. Because noise fades, but discipline doesn't. The Hidden Talent Initiative was no longer an experiment. It had become a movement, spreading base to base. Branch to branch, other instructors were being trained. Protocols were written. Doctrine was adapting. However, slowly, but with visibility came pressure. She could feel it. The questions, the meetings, the creeping claws of bureaucracy trying to optimize what was never meant to be managed. One general even suggested replacing her with someone with a formal military background. Said it would increase trust across ranks. She'd smiled at that, said nothing. But that night, she ran a course with 4 of her top graduates and beat every one of them at their own discipline without saying a word, because leadership isn't about power. It's about proof. Her program's next recruit didn't come from the mess hall or motor pool. He came from the stockade, Private Luke. Grayson, dishonorably discharged, stripped of his clearance, accused of dereliction after freezing during a live op overseas. He was doing cleanup duty pending transport back to civilian life when Sarah saw him sweeping shell casings outside the range. He was alone, shoulders hunched, beard unkempt, eyes empty. She didn't approach right away, just watched. He moved slowly, but his hands told another story. Deliberate, precise, like someone who used to care, like someone who hadn't always been broken. 3 days later, she left a note taped to the broom closet. You ever want to shoot again? Come find me. No pressure. S. M. He showed up a week later. Didn't say a word. Just stood at the edge of the range. She handed him a suppressed 308 bolt action. Single shot, she said. You've got 5 minutes. He took the rifle like it might burn him, but his stance was perfect. He hit a steel silhouette at 1,200 meters on the first try. Turned to her after and whispered, "Why?" She didn't flinch, because I don't believe your worst moment defines your entire story. Grayson became her most reluctant student. Never talked much, never bragged, but he showed up every day. And within 3 months, he was running sniper Overwatch scenarios that rivaled Tier 1 operators. When word got out that a washout had been integrated into the program, the usual critics circled, commanders whispered, a colonel emailed HQ. Is she recruiting failures now? But they weren't watching the same thing Sarah was. They didn't see how Grayson stayed late to help others train, how he corrected stance and breathing without condescension, how he always took the worst bunk and never asked for credit. They didn't see that he wasn't broken, he was rebuilding, and she just handed him the blueprint. Late one night, Morrison found her sitting alone in the empty classroom. Staring at the whiteboard, he didn't speak at first, just stood there, the way he did now, quietly. Finally, "You okay?" She didn't answer right away. "I've spent most of my life being invisible," she said. "Now everyone sees me, but only through the lens of what I did that one day." She traced her finger across the board. No numbers, just silence. "I don't want to be remembered for the shot." Morrison sat down. "Then what?" She looked up. Her voice didn't crack, but it trembled. "For what came after?" He nodded. "You already are." There was one last name on her list, someone she hadn't been ready to confront. Master Sergeant Carlos Martinez, her father. She hadn't seen him since the shot went viral, not in person. Their last call was short, tense, proud, yes, but distant. The way old soldiers show emotion, in fragments. But something inside her had shifted. It wasn't enough to build programs. She had to rebuild bridges. She took leave, went home. The same dusty stretch of desert where it all began. He was sitting on the porch, metal leg propped up, radio playing some old Spanish folk tune, watching the wind move through dry brush. When he saw her, he stood slower than he used to, but he smiled. "About damn time," he muttered. They didn't hug. Not right away, just stood there in silence. Then he looked at her, really looked. "You carried it well," he said. "The weight," she exhaled, shaky. "I was angry," she admitted, at how they treated me, at how invisible I felt. "But I think I needed to get here." He nodded. "And now?" "I don't want revenge anymore," he grinned. "That's when you know you're aiming at the right thing." They spent 2 days in the desert, just like old times, cleaning rifles, reading wind, shooting nothing, just breathing. She told him about the initiative, the recruits, the problems, the miracles. He listened, didn't offer advice, didn't try to take credit, just said, "Make sure you take care of yourself too." On the third morning, he handed her his old spotter's notebook. worn, yellow, dog-eared. Inside were notations, lessons, diagrams, and a page at the back. Just one sentence. Don't just teach them to shoot, teach them to see. When she returned to base, something felt different. Her students noticed it first. Not louder, just more still, grounded. She wasn't just training marksmen anymore. She was training leaders, people who could see further than their scope, into others, into systems, into themselves. The brass kept asking when she was going to take a formal role. Commissioned as an officer, wear the uniform. She declined every time, because what made her powerful wasn't conformity, it was truth, raw, unflinching, earned, and sometimes the most. Disciplined person in the room isn't wearing stripes. They're just watching and waiting, and one day, teaching the person who used to outrank them. Why was a former sniper contractor briefing special forces on human behavior? Because Sarah Martinez had learned something the brass had overlooked for decades. No one fights harder than the underestimated. The Hidden Talent Initiative wasn't just producing marksmen anymore. It was producing thinkers, listeners, quiet professionals who didn't chase praise. They chased clarity. And someone upstairs had noticed. The email came in blunt and unceremonious. A new joint training opportunity. High-tier operators from multiple branches. A civilian consultant was requested to oversee a non-conventional exercise on predictive threat analysis and reaction time. They wanted Sarah. She read the message twice. Before closing her laptop, no celebration, just another coffee. But when she walked into the ops tent the next week and saw the faces staring back at her, elite snipers, recon team leaders, combat instructors, all waiting for her to speak, something in her chest tightened. Not fear, not pride, a different weight. She wasn't just being seen. She was being trusted. She opened the briefing with a question. What's the first thing you notice when you walk into a room full of strangers? Silence, then. Threat posture, said one. Exit paths, said another. Hands, said a third. Sarah nodded slowly. All good answers, but none of them tell you the whole story. She clicked to the next slide. A still photo of a crowded cafeteria. Find the shooter, she said. They leaned forward, eyes scanning. Seconds passed, then minutes. No one answered. She clicked to the next slide. Same room. Seconds later, a man mid-reach toward a concealed weapon. Same face, same clothes, same posture, but his eyes. You missed. She said, because you were looking for aggression, not suppression. The room was quiet now, sharpened. Threats don't always shout, she continued. Sometimes they shrink. Sometimes they're invisible. Until it's too late. Morrison, sitting near the back, smiled faintly. He knew this lesson well. Outside of the tent, the range had become something else entirely. Less training ground, more proving ground. Not for ego, but for evolution. Sarah's instructors, Maria Santos, Tommy Chun, Radar Williams, and even Grayson now led subgroups in specialized disciplines, each one teaching others how to see, how to feel the subtle indicators of movement. Pressure, intent. They weren't building warriors. They were building readers of the unseen, and that scared people. Not all of them welcomed the change. Some units quietly pulled out, said it felt too psychological. Others tried to mimic the process without the heart, turning the initiative into just another checklist. But Sarah stayed the course, because truth doesn't always scale cleanly. One night, while reviewing range logs in the empty armory, she noticed something odd. Grayson's score sheets. Every set of numbers was off by the same fraction. 2 millimeters low and right. Every time, consistent error. She called him in. He arrived fast. Still in sweat-soaked PT gear, breath shallow. You all right? She asked. He nodded, but his hands trembled. Something's wrong, she said gently. But it's not your shooting. He didn't respond. She waited. Then he spoke. It's back, he said quietly. The freeze, Not during shots, after. When I closed my eyes, Sarah said nothing. Just listened. He sank into a chair like he'd been holding that confession for years. I thought training again would fix it, that proving myself would kill it, but it's still there. That second where I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. And my team had to pull me out. Sarah let the silence hold them both. You know what makes you valuable, Grayson? She said finally. It's not the fact that you got back up. It's that you're still walking through the fire with your eyes open. He looked up, something wet breaking loose behind his eyes. I don't feel like a soldier anymore. He whispered. She shook her head. That's okay. You're not. He blinked. You're something more dangerous. The next morning, Sarah rewrote part of the curriculum. Not just drills, not just metrics, but decompression, quiet spaces, mental loadouts, time to rebuild between impact zones. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't praised. But it saved people, word spread to command. Again. But this time, not from critics, from believers. A recon captain wrote, "This program doesn't just improve performance. It heals something we didn't know was bleeding." A female logistics officer sent a message. For the first time in my career, I feel like I'm not pretending to be brave. A base commander in Germany requested materials to start his own shadow cell. Sarah sent them herself, annotated, personalized. She knew the faces now, not just the stats. Because it had never been about scaling results, it was about scaling belief. But not every mission can be taught in classrooms, and not every lesson ends in victory. It happened during a live exercise in the Mojave, a multi-unit integration scenario. Simulated hostage rescue, real terrain, live comes, stressors layered like armor. Sarah was observing, not leading, until everything unraveled. The weather changed. Wind shifted. A team got disoriented. Radio failure. They lost visual. The entire op collapsed in under 4 minutes. A corporal, fresh off Sarah's training pipeline, was injured during extraction. Miscommunication led to a fall. A busted knee, torn ligaments. The brass were furious. Sarah took responsibility. Didn't deflect, didn't excuse, just walked into the review room and laid the failure at her own feet. I didn't equip them to improvise fast enough, she said. That's my miss. The room was silent. Then someone across the table, a colonel who hadn't believed in the program from the start, leaned back and sneered. You think you're some kind of savior? Sarah met his gaze without blinking. No, she said. I think I'm a student, just like the rest of them. He had no answer for that, because how do you argue with someone who never stops learning? Later, she found the injured corporal recovering. In the infirmary, he looked sheepish, ashamed. I let you down, he said. No, she replied, brushing a hair from his forehead. You reminded me this isn't about perfection. It's about pressure. He tried to smile. I'll get better. No, you will. She stayed there a while, just sitting, no orders, no wisdom. Just presence, because sometimes the best leaders don't speak. They simply stay. Back on the range, the instructors tightened their routines, reviewed failure points, debriefed harder, practiced smarter. Grayson, now stable and sharper than ever, took over as lead spotter for urban simulation drills. Maria trained a new batch of cooks-turned-combatants. Chun rewrote the flanking doctrine for small team evasions, and Sarah. She watched, she listened, she kept the lights on, because it wasn't about her anymore. It was about the ones coming next, the ones who had no voice, the ones still being dismissed in the back rooms of briefing halls, the ones who weren't invited, but showed up anyway. Sometimes people ask her why she stayed a civilian, why she never put on the uniform she could have worn with honor, and every time, she answers the same way, because someone had to stand on the outside and believe in what's inside. Why did she walk the base every night after lights out? Because silence is where you see the things noise tries to cover. Sarah Martinez walked the perimeter with her hands in her pockets. The dry wind whispering through fences, the moon catching on razor wire. No escort, no weapon, just observation. She knew where the real threats were now. They weren't hiding in insurgent tunnels or behind simulated barricades. They were embedded in routines, in assumptions, in the way soldiers look through cooks, mechanics, techs, and in the way those same overlooked people had stopped looking at themselves. Sarah had shattered that glass once with a bullet. Now she was doing it one quiet conversation at a time. The Hidden Talent Initiative had reached 12 bases across 5 countries. A private message came in from a base in Germany. 2 of our best shooters now came from the laundry unit, another from Alaska. Our airfield janitor turned out to be a Cold War veteran sniper. No one ever asked, but for every win, there was resistance. Sarah could feel it growing higher up, beyond the officers who knew her personally. Quiet pushback. Internal memos questioning her scope of influence. Analysts combing her program for liabilities. Commanders whispering about returning to standardized pipelines. She wasn't surprised. You don't disrupt hierarchy without making enemies. But she didn't slow down, because for every critic in a polished uniform, there was a Santos, a Grayson, a Chun, rising from the margins with fire in their lungs and skills no one expected. Still, the storm was coming, and she knew it. It started with a transfer request, Morrison. He walked into her office at 1900 hours. No folder, no preamble, just truth. I'm being reassigned, he said. She looked up slowly. Voluntary? He shook his head. They want me to bring your model to a more conventional environment. Sarah leaned back, eyes tired. And I think it's a setup, he said. They want to dilute what you've built. Chop it up into digestible doctrine. Make it safe. He didn't sound angry, just sad. She nodded. She'd seen this coming. I can say no, he offered. Push back. No, she said quietly. Go. He blinked. Because you'll carry the truth with you, she continued. And not all fires are meant to stay in one place. He stood there for a moment, unsure. Then, you ever think about what happens when this place forgets what you've done? Sarah's answer was a whisper. Then I'll remind them. That week, she hosted her last open-range drill before evaluation started. Everyone was invited. No ranks, no distinctions, uniforms, coveralls, civilian clothes. It didn't matter. They called it the Ghost Range, because half the shooters had never touched a weapon in a sanctioned capacity, and yet the top 3 scores came from a shipping clerk, a base librarian, a janitor who'd once been a scout sniper in Vietnam. The crowd cheered, laughed, celebrated. But behind it all, Sarah saw the shift in the air. The unspoken discomfort from command staff watching civilians outperform enlisted marksmen. She could feel the political ground shifting beneath her boots. 2 days later, a meeting, high level, dark suits, laminated folders. A major from command read her a list of concerns. Performance irregularities, escalated liability exposure, risk of over-empowerment of non-commissioned personnel. She sat there quietly, not blinking once. Miss Martinez, the major said finally, we appreciate your work, but this program is beginning to draw attention. And not all of it is positive. She leaned forward. Define positive. The room fell still. Another man, older, leaned in, a colonel war-weary eyes. Your initiatives inspired over 100 commendations and dozens of skill-based promotions, but it also questions our structure, the unspoken contract of who gets to lead and who's expected to follow. Sarah exhaled slowly. So what are you saying? The colonel folded his hands. We're saying you can keep your title, but the Hidden Talent Initiative is being dissolved at the national level. Localized programs can remain, but under standard command authority. In simpler words, we're taking it from you. That night, she didn't walk the perimeter. She sat on the bleachers by the empty range, the desert wind colder than usual. Grayson found her there around 2,300 hours. He sat down quietly. They're shutting it down, aren't they? She didn't answer. He looked at her, face calm. So what happens now? Her voice was slow. We keep going, just not officially. Grayson nodded. I'm in. No hesitation. A moment later, Maria appeared behind them, coffee in hand. I heard, she said. Guess we'll have to get creative. Then Chun, then Williams. Then others, instructors, graduates, quiet believers, one by one. No rank, no orders. Just presence and purpose. They called it echo training. Unofficial, off-hours, word of mouth only. Held at abandoned ranges, off-grid warehouses, hidden corners of forgotten facilities. No rosters, no rewards, just the same philosophy. Skill has no uniform. And it spread again this time under radar. The flame was smaller, but hotter, and it couldn't be extinguished. 1 year later, Sarah returned to the Hall of Fame. The Barrett still hung there, silent. Same plaque. The rifle that proved excellence. Has no uniform. She stared at it for a long time, then walked outside, where a group of trainees, cooks, drivers, medical clerks were waiting for her in the dust. She didn't say much, just passed out rifles, and started the lesson because truth doesn't need permission, and legacy doesn't need a title. Sometimes, change looks like a shot heard around the world, but more often, it looks like a quiet figure walking back to the range, long after everyone else has gone home. Why did they call her back? Because when all their systems failed, she was the one person they trusted to operate without one dot. It started with a distress call from a small outpost overseas. Remote, unstable, with rumors of a growing insurgent cell in the surrounding hills. Standard patrol had gone missing. Comms were scrambled. And no one, not command, not recon, not drones, could get a clean read on the area. Then someone at the Pentagon dropped her name. They needed a ghost. Not just a shooter. Someone who saw what others couldn't. Who could move through ego, through politics, through noise, and cut clean. And they remembered Sarah Martinez. Not for her rank dot, but for the one thing the military machine could never. Reproduce Kalan judgment dot. They didn't ask her if she was available. They told her. Orders arrived in a sealed courier pouch. Temporary civilian reactivation. Full authority under Special Operations Command for a single. Off-books mission classified no records just coordinates and one name at the bottom of the page. Colonel James Harrison. The same commander who had once told her, "You're not the help, you're the answer." She didn't hesitate. She packed the Barrett last, not because she needed it, but because it had become a part of her. The flight was long, quiet, inside a transport that smelled like old canvas, spent powder, and resolve. Morrison met her at the airfield. Clean shaven, leaner, eyes focused. He didn't salute. Just said, "About time." She gave him a tired smirk. "Didn't realize they needed us both." "They don't," he said. "They just don't know what else to try." They drove in silence, sand skimming the windows like whispers from the past. At the forward base, Sarah took control of the recon brief. She stood before a room of elite soldiers, foreign liaisons, intel officers, people who lived and died by satellite feeds and battle doctrine. And then she did something strange. She turned off the projector. "Forget the tech," she said. "Forget the assumptions. Tell me about the terrain. Tell me what the wind feels like, what the locals aren't saying." Confused glances. She pointed at a young translator in the corner. "You," she said. "When you walk the market, do they stare at your boots or your eyes?" He blinked. "My eyes." She nodded. "Then something's changed. They're afraid of being seen lying. That's intel." She turned to the weather analyst. "Wind direction? Variable." "Wrong," she said. "The sand on the tent says consistent southwestern drift. 4 knots. You're reading sensors. I'm reading reality." They watched her like someone reading the ocean with their bare hands. Morrison leaned back and smiled. The next day, she led a 4-person recon into the hills. Her team? Morrison, a quiet Afghan mechanic with sniper level observation skills, identified from Echo training 2 years prior. And Grayson. Yes, Grayson, recovered, hardened, not just stable, sharp. They called him Whisper. Now, he didn't speak. Unless it mattered. Sarah carried a suppressed M110. Morrison, an M4. The mechanic, an old Mosin. Grayson, just a spotting scope and a silent sidearm. They moved like ghosts. No drone overhead, no chatter. Just wind, sun, and instinct. Within hours, Sarah noticed what drones couldn't. Paths worn in the rock, trash piles with only food wrappers and cigarette butts, signs of movement, not encampment. Gun oil scent baked into stones. This wasn't a base dot. It was a moving perimeter. Night fell like a curtain. They dug into a ridgeline, camouflaged in brush and dust. At 0200, Grayson spotted them. 8 insurgents. Moving low, coordinated, carrying gear wrapped in canvas. Too smooth for weapons, too heavy for supplies. IEDs. Planted along a supply route. Sarah whispered, "We stopped them here." Morrison was already dialing in his scope, but she held out a hand. "Let them get close," she said. "I want confirmation of target priority." They waited, heartbeats in slow time. At 28 meters, one of the men stumbled, revealing the tip of a pressure rig, military grade, likely stolen. Grayson was the first to move. No shot, just a whisper. "Confirmed." Sarah exhaled. And time changed. The first round cracked from her rifle, shattering the lead man's kneecap. Non-lethal. Immobilizing. Morrison and the mechanic followed, suppressing, disabling, not killing unless necessary. By the time backup arrived, 6 insurgents were restrained. 2 were wounded. None were dead. The tech recovered from the rigs? Enough to devastate a convoy. But the real win? Intelligence. Inside one of the packs, maps, thumb drives, documents. All missed by recon flyovers. All revealed by human instinct. By silence. Back at the forward base, the commander debriefed them in stunned disbelief. "No casualties?" he asked. "You could have opened fire," Sarah interrupted, "and lost the intel. We're not here to score kills. We're here to stop war before it starts." He looked at her, a bit in awe. "You're not just a marksman," he said. She shook her head. "I never was." They flew home without ceremony. No medals. No press release. Just classified files and a quiet nod from Harrison before she left the debrief room. "You did what systems couldn't," he said. Again. "Didn't do it alone." "I know." Back on base, Echo training resumed in a new form. Smaller, sharper, closer to the ground. Whisper became an assistant instructor. The mechanic from the mission returned home with honors. Morrison stayed a few more weeks, then quietly requested reassignment again, not upward, downward. Requested to work under her. She laughed when she read the form, but signed it. "Sir?" the admin asked, puzzled. "She's the better shot," Morrison said. "Always has been." That night, Sarah returned to the Hall of Fame. This time, she brought a screwdriver. She removed the brass plaque from under the Barrett, wiped it clean, and replaced it with a new one. The rifle that reminded the world. Skill is born in silence, and respect is earned in dust. Why do some stories vanish from history, even when they rewrite it? Because the ones worth remembering don't beg to be told. They just keep echoing in locker rooms, on ranges, through fireteam whispers and midnight confessions. And Sarah Martinez? She never asked to be remembered. She just refused to be ignored. 2 years after the shot that changed everything. The Hidden Talent Initiative had no official building, no funding, And no chain of command, but it had graduates. It had scars. It had momentum. Echo training, born from necessity, had become a quiet rebellion against the way things had always been done. Still informal, still off the books, still transforming lives. Some called it dangerous. Others called it evolution. Sarah just called it unfinished. The range looked different now. Newer. Just more. Lived in. Bullet casings caught between gravel. Handmade. Flags in the corners, stitched from uniforms of the overlooked. Medics, janitors, quartermasters. Every Friday evening, Sarah ran a night course. No floodlights. Just moon. Just wind. She'd line up trainees from every corner of the base. Maintenance crews, supply runners, cooks, comms techs, and put a suppressed carbine in each of their hands. No orders. No yelling. Only a whisper. Breathe. Don't impress me. Just prove it to yourself. One night, a young woman, barely 20, pale, quiet, usually hunched over paperwork in the admin tent, stepped forward during live fire. She was shaking. Sarah moved beside her. First time? She nodded. Never even touched a rifle before. Then it's the perfect time. The girl aimed, breath stuttered, pulled the trigger. The shot was wide, but not wild. The girl turned to Sarah, shame creeping up her neck. I missed. Sarah shook her head. No, you started. Months passed. The Pentagon issued a formal review of Sarah's program. They didn't shut it down this time. They didn't endorse it. Either. Just buried it in a gray area. Unofficial, untouchable. UNKILLABL. She was fine with that. Because change never needed permission. Only persistence. Grayson, Whisper, was now teaching full-time, often leading drills without saying a single word. Trainees learned to read the wind just by watching his eyes. He'd found a rhythm, a purpose. Not in redemption, but in service beyond his scars. Maria Santos became the first woman from Echo training to be selected for a special response team, not because of her gender or her story, but because she outshot the board during qualification. Chun. He'd published a new manual, one that quietly replaced 3 outdated doctrines with practical insights from the people who'd never been invited into the room before. Sarah watched them all with quiet pride. She didn't lead from the front. She walked beside them. Always beside. Then came the message, a small package. No return address. Inside, a hand-folded flag. No note. Just a patch sewn into the seam. Riflewoman, Echo 1. It was from a trainee who'd once told her he was worthless, who'd since saved 4 soldiers in a real-world op by spotting a hidden IED in the dark using nothing but wind patterns and instinct. She held the flag for a long time, didn't cry, didn't speak. Just folded it again and placed it under her bed. The Barrett M82, the rifle that started it all, no longer hung in the Hall of Fame. Sarah had removed it herself, not in protest. In preservation. She carried it into the desert. One morning before dawn, the same Mojave Sands where she first learned to fire under her father's watchful eye. She found their old spot, sat there as light spilled over the hills, like memory made visible. Then she opened a notebook, her father's spotter log, and added a final line. The longest shot isn't the one you make. It's the life you live after you pull the trigger. She closed the book, laid it beside the rifle, walked away. Years passed. The military changed. Slowly. Not all at once. Not because of headlines, but because of whispers. Policies adjusted. Programs adapted. Officers started asking different questions. During interviews, some began to look beyond ribbons and resumes. They started asking, who trained you? And the answer, more and more, became Martinez. She was invited to speak once at a leadership symposium. Big auditorium. Press badges. PowerPoint slides. She stood at the podium for 30 seconds before saying anything. Then, I don't care where you came from. I care how much silence you endured to be standing here. And then she walked off. Morrison eventually retired. He never quite found another mission like hers, but he kept the plaque she gave him. The day you outshot me was the day I learned to listen. On his office wall until the day he packed his last duffel. He called her before he left. I was wrong, you know, back then. She smiled softly on the other end of the line. You weren't wrong, she said. You were early. Sarah Martinez never wrote book. Never gave a TED Talk. Never posed for magazines. But somewhere, on nearly every active base in the country, there's a dusty corner of the range where someone's teaching someone else how to breathe before they fire, how to see before they're seen, and how to lead before they're followed. And if you ask those instructors where they learned it, they'll smile, tilt their head, and say something like, I didn't learn it from a manual. I learned it from her. Because Sarah Martinez never needed rank to lead. She never needed a title to matter. She never asked for respect. She earned it in silence, taught it in dust, and proved it with one impossible shot, followed by 1,000 unspoken acts of belief. And when history forgets to write her name, it won't matter, because she already lives in the hands of every person who was told they weren't enough, until they proved they were, one bullet at a time.